keynote speech, I would like to invite someone who is a leading figure in the creative economies globally, an international speaker and writer on creativity, an experienced leadership mentor, and an experienced leader, of course, who was awarded an OBE for services to creative industries and the arts in 2015. And he is the chair of the PEC's International Advisory Council. You all very well know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about John Newbigin. Sir, could you please kindly make it to the stage?
Thank you, Elif. What kind of a keynote to give after that session? If any of us were under any illusion that economy and society don't go together, what happened in that last session demonstrates how closely they are related. Any form of economic activity has an impact on the society. And what we're discussing today, a creative economy, which is growing, is having a growing influence on societies around the world. So I don't want to spend the next 20 minutes, I promise you I will not be more than 20 minutes, talking about summing up what's happened during the day in a sense, but I think to try and draw a few lessons out of what we've been talking about today would be useful. And of course we've heard about the war in Ukraine and the impact that that has on culture and creative economy, but all of us are experiencing different kinds of stress and challenge because of climate change, because of COVID, because of a coming global recession, or certainly a slowdown in the global economy. What is the response of culture, creativity, and the creative economy to all these challenges? And 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, we could not possibly have had a conference like this. There would not be a sufficient bulk of understanding and enthusiasm and activity going on in the cultural sector anywhere in the world, certainly not in this part of the world, to be able to have the kind of discussion that we've had today. So why is that? Why is the creative economy growing? And there's a number of reasons for that, it seems to me. And you could say it's now growing again despite COVID. You could also say it's growing again because of COVID. And by that I mean the pandemic, I think, made everybody realize that culture is a hugely important part of the infrastructure of all our societies, and therefore it's made governments and it's made civil society more aware of how important culture and creativity is. And if you think about the way people are responding to that, all of us want to have things that express our identity, whether it's clothes, whether it's the music we listen to, whether it's the kind of entertainment that we want, whether it's the kind of furniture we buy for our houses. We want to express our identity through cultural goods and services. And as education levels rise and incomes rise around the world, however slowly they may be doing that at the moment, people want to be able to express that more. So, of course, there is a growing desire for distinctiveness. And at a time when many international relations are becoming more fraught, celebrating our cultural distinctiveness is important. It doesn't have to be done in a hostile way, but we can be proud of who we are and we can exchange with other people. We like our cultural distinctiveness. And there's another issue as well, of course, which is that people want to be increasingly socially responsible in their buying habits because climate change becomes a reality. We visited a fashion house yesterday here in Istanbul where sustainability is at the core of what they do, and it's not just environmental sustainability, but it's social sustainability. People want to buy goods and services in a way that is socially responsible. So in all these ways, these are about demand. It's what an economist would call the demand side of the economy, but today we've been talking exclusively about supply, the supply side, the inputs, skills, finance, business support, marketing, and so on. So I want to focus just for a couple of minutes on the demand side, which is what we've not been talking about today. And demand is increasing for some of the reasons that I've just suggested. We can increase demand for creative goods and services in all kinds of quite simple ways. One is by being more creative in the way we market things. And Danny from Kyrgyzstan was telling me about a project run with the Japanese government in Kyrgyzstan a year or two ago, where identifying particular products from particular villages and towns in Kyrgyzstan, which might have potential in the Japanese market, were being designed, or not being designed, but were being packaged and marketed by Japanese designers and marketeers to make them more accessible to a Japanese market. So I know this is a challenge. We were talking last year in Uzbekistan. The Japanese market should be a huge market for Japanese ceramics. But maybe there has to be some kind of intermediary that enables Japanese customers to understand better what are the qualities of the Uzbek manufacturer. So being more creative in the way we think about marketing can make a difference. On a slightly bigger scale, I think, we still think of video games as primarily about entertainment, but we also know that video games has got a huge impact in education. We heard about that today. Can have a huge impact in health, can have a huge impact in traffic planning. Some of the SimCity software is being used to help traffic management in real cities. We can be more creative in thinking about the demand side of the creative economy, not just the supply side, in the way that we develop policies. But another way of thinking about it is governments, all our governments, spend a huge amount of money. And on what basis do they spend it? They spend it on what is cheapest. That's one definition of value for money. They spend it on giving the contract to the minister's friend. That's another way of thinking about value for money. But actually, however it's described, governments spend a lot of money. And smart governments around the world are beginning to realize that if they spend their money more wisely, more carefully, and look for creative responses to increasingly difficult situations, they can get better value for money. So again, we can increase the demand side of the creative economy by trying to encourage public services at national and local level to look for more creative solutions in the way they buy things. So that's another way in which we could grow demand. But of course, the real way we change demand is through education. And creative education enables people to develop a discriminatory attitude towards culture to be better customers, if you like, better consumers of culture by having a better understanding of art form, being able to understand and appreciate the creativity of other people, as well as exercising their own creativity. And it's an old adage, isn't it? You can't have sophisticated production if you don't have sophisticated consumption. Demand needs to be demanding. We have great theatre in the UK because we have demanding theatre audiences. And it used to be a joke that we had terrible food in the UK because we didn't have demanding audiences. I remember being in Georgia a few years ago with a guy who was driving me from one town to the next, and we drove up some mountain road for miles and miles and miles. Where are we going? Because there's somebody in this village that makes, is it hachapuri? This kind of Georgian bread. And he said, this is the only man who knows how to make this kind of bread in this part of Georgia. So there's a man who is demanding about the kind of bread he has. He will make the baker produce good bread. If we have demanding audiences, the quality of our cultural experience changes. But the other dimension of that kind of demand, of course, is that somebody who has the ability to know what they want and know what they like is the kind of person who is going to be more inclined, probably, to think about the kind of society that they want to live in, to think about inclusivity, to think about diversity, to think about quality of life. So going back to some of the things that Louisa touched on, it does seem to me that creative societies thrive in open societies. It is very difficult to have real creativity in a closed society. So creative education and creative economy can help to drive more creative and open societies in all kinds of ways, not just necessarily in political ways, but in social ways, in all kinds of ways. But the point is that we mustn't just think about the creative economy in terms of supply, we need to think about it in terms of demand. And if we're going to think about it in terms of demand, we have to start with the education system, the kind of education system that we want for people who can be critical, self-critical, learn how to collaborate, learn how to distinguish between things that work and things that don't work, learn how to distinguish between things that are smart and things that are not smart. And that's not just a point about the politics of any society. It is a point about how we address climate change. It's a point about how we address urban intensification. You can only solve the problems of Istanbul if you have really creative thinking going on. So the fact there's a Vision 2050 for this city, the fact there's a development agency, the fact there's a planning agency, these are crucial parts, not just of having a nice to live in Istanbul, but having a livable Istanbul, full stop. So this business of engaging creativity in a much more embracing way than we're inclined to think, to really think about how we demand creativity, because the more we demand creativity, the more we create the kind of society which will be sustainable, inclusive, diverse, all the things that we've been talking about today that we know come with a creative economy and a creative society. So that's my little homily to end the day, not picking up on what we talked about today, but saying, let's not, in developing policy, remember that it's not just about the inputs, it's not just about the finance and the skills and the markets, important though those things are. It's what we do with creativity. It's what we demand creativity does. Because for production to be quality, demand needs to be demanding. Thank you.